Welcome to the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your employees all the information they need to be successful at their jobs. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, host of the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your staff everything they need to be successful at their job. I always tell people, Kristin, check out past episodes and I have to come up with some new ones. I mean, Carl Cox was an amazing one, talk about operations and systemization. Though, you know, the go-to ones, people like the one with David Allen of Getting Things Done and Michael Gerber of the E-Myth, and there's many more, so check those out. And before I introduce today's guest, and this is a really cutting edge company doing some amazing things, I'm excited to introduce it. This episode is brought to you by Sweet Process. And if you've had team members ask you the same questions over and over, there is a better way, there is a solution. Sweet Process is actually a software that makes it drop dead easy to train and onboard new staff and save time with existing staff. And I was talking with Owen, universities use them, banks use them, hospitals, software companies, but first responder government agencies use them in life or death situations. Actually, we featured them on the podcast to talk about that. And you could use Sweet Process to document all the repetitive tasks that eat up your precious time, your team's precious time. So you can just focus on growing and delivering a great service to your customers. So sign up for a free 14-day trial. No credit card is required. Go to sweetprocess.com. Sweet like candy is SWEET process.com. You know, it's funny because when I was looking, I'm like, oh, and like, your service is super reasonable as far as they give up, you know, some software companies, you know, it's like one per user. He's like, no, you get 25 user accounts with one monthly fee. It's really reasonable. So check it out if you've thought about actually systemizing it in one place. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Kristin Ashcraft. She's the COO at Genome Medical, which is a privately held venture-backed telegenomics company. Kristin is skilled at many things, including corporate strategy, execution, transforming underperforming teams, and much more. And we'll talk about that, how she went in the past and helped fix things up, but she feels there's a better solution to just fixing things up. And she also helps to create effective organizational culture and strives to build really strong relationships within that culture and organization. So, Kristin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. It's great to be here with you.
I wanted to start off with, I'm fascinated by Genome Medical and what you do. Just tell people about the company and what you do.
Yeah. So we're a telegenomics company that provides services and technology that brings genomics to patients everywhere. And I think these days, people are probably fairly familiar with telehealth and the concept of doing virtual visits. They may not be as familiar with genomics, which is the study of the 20,000 genes that make us who we are. And understanding more about what your genetics entails can actually help drive forward precision medicine. So things that are going to help you have a better experience in life based on what's actually in your DNA. So that's what we're doing every day. And we have a nationwide telehealth practice of clinicians, and we bring that care to patients. So.
One of the reasons, Kristin, is because you were saying there's a limited number of geneticists, right?
Yeah. So definitely happy to jump in. My team has asked me to do a little bit of a disclaimer, given that this is a natural flow in a podcast conversation, but these statements coming up are my views, and I'll be expressing them today on my own behalf. They're not intended to bind or be representative of Genome Medical in any way. But now that we've said that, yes, the genetics specialist field is very much growing, but not in the same pace as the market for genomics. And so having access to a genetics specialist who understands the specific needs of your condition or potential condition may be harder to do, depending on where you are, where you live. And so that's kind of the set of barriers that we're working to break down.
Yeah, when I look at the website, it talks about understanding your health risk, gaining insights from your own DNA, which, like you said, provides precision to whatever that person's experiencing and make informed decisions.
Mhm.
What do people typically, why are they coming to Genome Medical? What are they experiencing in their health or their life?
Yeah, it can happen through a number of ways. Patients may come to us on their own because they're curious about their own genetic background and they're maybe not getting the same kind of support that they think they need. So we have patients who come to us, for example, they have a family history of cancer. Their mom maybe had cancer, an aunt maybe passed away from cancer, but their primary care physician is telling them that they don't need a mammogram and they may not need genetic testing. That is when we do get some patients coming to us proactively to assess what their risk is. And that's not because primary care physicians don't want to provide it. It's sometimes they don't know all the information that they need. So we are also on a mission to help inform, educate, and support our providers in delivering genetics care and being that kind of care team for them that they can refer to. We also work with other actors in the healthcare space, health systems, laboratories, to help support patients that they may already have that they're working with, and they have done a genetic test with them, and they would like to have those results reviewed by a genetic counselor or a geneticist.
Yeah. So I could see that someone has a strong family history. They may be young. They want to be proactive. And there's really no proactive tests, usually with healthcare stuff. It's like, well, now you have a problem. We should test for it. So this is a proactive way of people can kind of find out what's going on inside their own DNA. And there's a woman in her early 30s that came to you. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So there was a woman who came to us in her early 30s. Her mother had passed away. Her aunt died at 41 of breast cancer. And her primary care physician indicated that she didn't need to do any kind of testing until she was in her 40s. And the patient decided to come to us proactively and get the testing done so that she could have peace of mind about what was the future going to hold for her and her family. So those are the types of situations where we can support both sides of the spectrum, both physicians who refer patients to us, as well as patients who come directly to us.
So how does it work? Do they have to send in like a blood test, or what? Like, what's the evaluation? What's that look like?
Yeah, so we do counseling ahead of time if you're curious of whether you don't know what the right test might be, and you want to find out if even testing is necessary. So we do have genetic counselors on staff who will review your family history, work with you, determine what maybe the right test might be. If a test is recommended, we can order that because we are a telehealth medical practice. And then that is done typically through a blood test or saliva. And then the results are reported back from a laboratory, and we can review those results with patients as well. So I myself have undergone genetic testing, and when I got my results back, I did have a conversation with a genetic counselor as well, just to make sure that I fully understood what the results were. And I'm actually a bio major. So even with familiarity in the space, I found comfort in actually talking to a genetic specialist who's been trained in the field, does it day in, day out, and is passionate about making sure patients understand their results.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a different language. And Kristin, you don't have to share details. I'm just curious for yourself, were there any recommendations made off of that, whether it's further testing or lifestyle in general?
Not for myself. For me, it was kind of a negative result where it was like, okay, this is what I needed to know. I can feel good about this.
Yeah. The negative is positive.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that is exactly the kind of thing that can result is, you can have follow-on care that's recommended based on what they know about the causes of a condition you might have.
Yeah. I mean, this topic, kind of freaks me out in a sense of this stuff. A lot of the stuff just is underlying. We're not seeing it. It's not showing any clinical signs or symptoms. If you look at, think of heart disease, sometimes people's first sign of it could be an actual heart attack. And obviously that stuff is going on without maybe any signs or symptoms. And if you look on, and I encourage people to go to Genome Medical, and there's a resources tab, you can see there's genetic counseling, genetic testing, there's precision medicine, there's cancer genetics, there's cardiogenetics. there's reproductive genetics, there's all these things.
Mhm.
So, pick your poison. I say that in a positive way. Pick whatever category you're interested in and check out their website and go deeper in it. And so, I appreciate you sharing and going a little granular, because it's, and if you've thought about it, if you have family history, go to it and maybe tell your primary care physician about it, because they may not know. I mean, there's always cutting edge research and tools, and the stuff that you're doing may not even be known. And you as a company were doing telehealth stuff before COVID too. So it wasn't like, oh, we just transitioned to this because COVID,
That's
right?
right.
You've been doing this previous to COVID.
Correct. And, again, in the conversations we started having, it's not unusual for primary care physicians to not have all of the information. There are now over 75,000 genetic tests. So to be an expert in that when you're doing so many other things as a primary care physician, that's kind of why specialists like us exist. And so we are here to kind of provide additional support for primary care physicians and other healthcare providers in the space to make sure that this helpful information is received by patients.
Yeah, totally. So Kristin, we'll transition from like fixing things in your body with Genome Medical to fixing things in the company. And previously, when you worked for other companies, people would call you in and be like, all right, Kristin, go at it, like fix it. Walk through some of the things that you had to go in and fix. And then I know you have better solutions, or you came in with better solutions, so it was more proactive.
Yeah, that became a bit of a calling card for me to come in, assess teams that seem to be underperforming and try to help them turn it around. And the way that we would assess underperformance is not meeting your key performance indicators, having poor quality, potentially having team members having to hire more than you think seems right for what they're doing. And maybe we're over budget in these areas. And so I would come in, assess the team, try to look for areas where there were operational deficiencies, but also kind of assess the team. And that's where my passion for really collaborating and pulling the ideas and just inspiration from the team was born. Because if you come in and people see you as this new leader who's there to quote unquote fix things, that's not always the most happy environment to walk into. However, if
they put their head down and look the other way and walk quickly away from you,
it could be perceived negatively. And what I kind of learned to do is come in, really get to know the team, not just to be there on a fact-finding mission, but really understand what are the strengths of the team, because even an underperforming team has strengths that you can build upon, and maybe they're not being tapped into in a certain way. And so what I have done is gotten to know the team, identified who those leaders are, and collaborated with them. Hey, you see this issue too. What are your ideas for fixing this? How do you see this as being something that we can tackle together? What do you need? What have you been asking for that you haven't been getting? And that usually brings about so many ideas, many of which end up being part of the strategy to fix it. And what I have done a few times over is when you have those open conversations and you ultimately move into action to address whatever the issue is, the team comes back to you with just their faces are lit up because they were a part of the solution and they can actually see it working. And that is the kind of the best gift, is coming in and fixing something, but doing it alongside your team members.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That collaborative approach, because oftentimes probably it's almost natural to go in and just try and fix it yourself. And when you have that collaborative nature, then people take ownership over it. And if it doesn't work, they probably take ownership over it not working and trying to fix it.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be the case. It's especially important when a change requires a lot of effort. So in a lot of these cases in my past, it required hours of training, cross-training, new roles and responsibilities. A lot of that change can be very disruptive. But if you're doing it alongside of your team and they can feel where you're trying to go and they're in it with you and they've even built some of the steps, when it comes to fruition, they're okay putting in the effort and the investment because they can understand why.
So the scenario is there's an underperforming team, like Kristin, all right, work your magic. And you go in and you assess the team first. What are some of the things that you do to assess the team where the situation's at?
Mm-hmm. I try to meet with people across all levels. So I want to hear what the leaders have to say, but then I also want to hear what every single member of the team, no matter what their role is, has to say. So if it's a large team, a representative from each function. If it's a smaller team, I'll talk to everybody. Even today, I've consistently maintained this. No matter what my structure is, if I have a set of direct reports, I always do skip level meetings with their direct reports because I want to understand what's going on in the team. So in an assessment period, meeting with all of them, meeting with cross-functional partners to really understand what's their perspective of the team. What do they see as opportunities? And try to bring that 360 view to how the team is operating and what kind of needs might be there, that gap analysis, essentially.
And then, so once you assess the team, do you come up with a level of here's where I see are the top 2 or 3 gaps, or what's the next stage on what you're looking to probably present, since it's collaborative, to the team?
Yeah, so I like to pull the teams together. I've learned over time to be transparent and upfront about this. I generally tell them, guys, I have 3 areas that I think are probably the pieces that are driving our issues most. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now. I want
then they
to
hate
have
you.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then I open it up and we start the dialogue. And generally what that does is it helps them know that I'm not coming in with no answers. I have some, but I'm also not pressing my ideas on the team.
You don't want to influence them.
Correct. And so I let them run for a while. And then if we don't touch on the 3 that I maybe had in mind, I'll throw it in there once we've had some time to discuss and say, hey, have you thought about this, and how do you react to it? And then I'll get their honest reactions. And sometimes it's a fit, and sometimes they're like, actually, no, that's not really an issue. Here's why. And so it, again, creates that facilitation and collaboration.
Got it. So you'll assess it so you can come up with kind of a hypothesis on here's the 3 things, but you really want to hear when then you bring everyone together after you've assessed it. You don't want to do that in the beginning because you kind of want to have kind of to see what they come up with and have in your mind what may be a structured solution. And then you bring it up and it will naturally come up within that. And when people touch on it, then it will confirm your hypothesis almost.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say confirm my hypothesis because I was actually a bio major in college. And, when you're doing research, you do put a hypothesis out there. You try to vet whether that is right or not over the course of time. And I think that is essentially what happens when I'm diagnosing these situations.
Yeah. That's maybe it comes because I was also a biochemistry major. So then you collaborate, everyone's in the room, and you come to these 3 things or 2 things, whatever. Maybe 2 of them are what you thought it was, and maybe there was a separate one that became the real issue. Then what do you do next? You've identified it. Then what comes next?
Yeah. So kind of key there is identifying who is going to be the one who carries the strategy forward, who creates the framework, who's essentially project managing it, even if that's not their role day to day in the company. It's actually one of my favorite things to do to not only assess what someone's role is in the company today, but what other areas of interest and strength they may have, and using those things to help drive this kind of organizational change or operational improvement. And so you would identify a project manager. You might identify someone who wants to dig into a specific system and assessing and vetting whether that's the right fit for that need. Then you have the person who's like, hey, once you guys are set on what we want to do, I want to train the team on how to do that. Okay, fantastic. And I have found over time that that's really effective in driving change because as leaders, we can't do it all ourselves. We have to delegate. And so if you're going to delegate effectively, you want to delegate tasks and projects to people, ideally, who want to do them and who get joy out of doing that piece of the work, as opposed to adding something to somebody's plate when it's already pretty full and having them cringe. right? And so I try to match that up too along the way so that you have the people who are passionate about the different steps in the process doing them, because they're going to be your best champions.
Yeah, and I love to hear about, so once you come to that and it's trained, how do you reassess whether it's someone reporting on a KPI or something? I'm curious of how you go back and check the system. But so I find you assess the team, you find the gaps, and then you collaborate about those things, and then you create accountability. So someone's accountable for it, and then you have those people help train the team. And then what happens as far as okay, let's check the system to see if this works.
Yeah, no, great question. One of the things that you want to do kind of at that point where you're about to kick off the change is set your baseline, right? So what is the existing set of metrics? What's the performance today? And then you want to measure that over the course of time as you've rolled out your organizational change. And you can really assess how your new process, structure, system is helping improve those baseline metrics. And that's the best way to gain momentum for maybe the next change, right? Because your team can see, hey, the effort we went through, it actually made sense and it worked out. Now, the other side is maybe you don't improve it. Maybe the results actually get worse, but sort of setting expectations that we'll come back to this, we'll continue to revise. We'll make sure that we can look at maybe option 2. Maybe we started with the first thing that didn't work the way we thought it would. Now we can move on to option 2. So it's keeping the team along for the ride, assessing it along the way so that they can see those results too and get behind whatever the next step is.
Yeah, no, thanks for laying that out. And so that's with fixing things. And then we were talking before we hit record on, well, it's actually better to do building than fixing. So what did you mean by that?
I wouldn't necessarily say better, but it's another side of operations, right? So are you coming into an organization that is well established and maybe has room for improvement, efficiency improvement, continuous improvement on quality, whatever it might be? Or are you coming into an organization where there's some things established, but there's an opportunity to build as well? And I think that it's something that operations leaders kind of need to assess what their passion area is. And for me personally, what I was looking for in my career when I came to Genome Medical was that opportunity to build. I enjoy fixing. It's really fulfilling to see that you can improve with the help of a team. It's also really fun to say, oh, wow, we don't have this established yet. So we could maybe take that manual process and automate it. And it's exciting to start that off in a fresh, I guess, and see kind of where it can go from there. And a lot of times we go and we get ideas from conferences, from peers, and you really want to implement them. And so having the chance to do that in a situation where it's maybe the first time, as opposed to maybe a subsequent time, a fifth time, a sixth time, it's fun. It's fun to see that side of the operational process.
Yeah, I can see that. One thing is just creating efficiencies with what's already there. And then the second is building other things that are going to improve the company. Can you give an example? It doesn't have to be from Genome Medical or it could be from the past company of a process or system that you came in, you're like, let's build this. Maybe like you said, it was something that was automated that wasn't automated. What would be an example so people can kind of wrap their heads around what building something could look like?
Sure. I think something that we kind of came about, this is more on building a community feeling in a company that can lead to this kind of operational efficiency and effectiveness. I've had the opportunity to build mentorship programs in the companies that I have worked with and build them from scratch. So what does it mean to offer up opportunities for people at various stages in their career to get guidance and mentorship from those who may be ahead of them on the career path? Obviously, mentors also get something out of those arrangements from learning from their mentees. But that opportunity to pull together cross-functional team members who care about this as a concept, but want to make it real, is something that I have done before and have gotten a ton of fulfillment out of. And it's very exciting when you see something start from an idea, build up into a process, get launched, have participants working within that program, and then seek feedback along the way on how you can improve it. And then you see the next class and the next class, and you see what happens when people are motivated and feel supported in their careers, the types of ideas, the types of energy they bring to their roles and their functions in the company. It really is, it comes full circle.
Yeah, I love that. I want to dig deeper into that mentorship program. And it kind of goes into the discussion, which I had in my mind that we're going to talk about, which is the importance of creating an open, transparent, and positive culture.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the basis for the mentorship? Is that or is there something else you had in mind when I say that?
No, I mean, there's so many aspects that I feel are important to creating a positive group culture and to ensuring that people feel like they understand their role in the company, in the team, and why they matter. Mentorship is one of those examples that shows them that they matter if a company is willing to invest in that. The other is to really create clear goals and show them how their role or function aligns back to those clear goals for the company, and showing them that they have a part in achieving the mission. I mean, at Genome Medical, we're trying to bring genomics to patients everywhere. How does every person in the company contribute to that in their day-to-day? It's easy to lose sight of that sometimes. And as leaders, I think that's really important to kind of bring that focus back. And the other piece of it too is to make sure that people know that they can be themselves, that they belong, that they can bring their whole experience to work, and that they're not just work robots, as I like to say. And I try to do that by, I mentioned skip levels earlier, mentorship, but just being available. And like team members today, they will send me a message on Slack and they'll apologize for interrupting me. And I always write back and say, I'm always here for you. Because if they don't feel that I am, how will they give me honest feedback when something is broken, or when a new thing we've put in place that I'm super excited about isn't working well for them? I need them to be honest for us to operate effectively and to scale effectively.
Yeah, I love that. Linking what the job does to how it's accomplishing the goals of the company. I remember I was talking to one person who had a large disaster restoration company, and he said, as the trucks would come in, the custodial staff would have to clean the nails and the other stuff, the debris off. And they said, linked it back. You have literally, he would say, you have the most important job, because if a nail gets in the tire, we can't get the trucks out. We can't service our, all that. So everyone's job links back to the goal and the importance of the end result.
Absolutely.
So I love to hear from the mentorship program. Mm-hmm. What have you found since you've set these up? What has not worked that people are like, don't try this. I have done this many times and this did not work. And what did you find worked really well as a general practice that people are like, yeah, that sounds great, Kristin. I should have a mentorship program.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is interesting is assessing how formal the mentorship program needs to be for your particular business or team. Sometimes really formal structures of they will be 30 minutes, they will be this way, is very helpful, depending on who the mentors are as well. Others, it's better to be a bit more casual. What I have found though is some structure is good. So making sure that people have some guardrail so that they know what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, how do I utilize this person's time effectively, and what can I expect from this? I think that helps a lot. One thing that I think has been a fear that some people do embark on mentorship programs with is, what if it's not a fit? What if I select this mentor-mentee relationship, I get into my first meeting and I just don't feel a connection, and the advice they're giving me, I don't agree with? What do I do? This is maybe a senior person in my organization if I'm the mentee, or I'm the senior person and I'm like, hey, this doesn't feel like a good use of my time. What do I do? And I think a key there that I've always tried to implement in the programs that I've created is you can let the program organizers know it's not a fit. It's okay. No one will be offended. We will ensure that we can exit, everybody will be on good terms, and we'll just find a better fit. That way, you know that the relationship is going to be strong and is going to actually benefit, hopefully, both parties. I think the thing that also has worked very well, which I like kind of relying on, is once you have the first class who knows that they're the first class, knows that they're going to probably have to give more feedback and input than maybe subsequent classes. If they can come back for that next class and talk about the experience, it's amazing, right? Because no one can replace the testimonial from someone who maybe was a little bit concerned going in, had all the same feelings that others do, but once they've gone through a mentorship program, they see the benefits and they can speak to what it meant to them. And, you know, for me personally, a previous program I set up now at Genome Medical, one of my direct reports is a prior mentee of mine. So those relationships, if they work well, they can be really helpful and productive in the future. And I've had mentees that are outside of the organization reach out to me months, years after the program has ended, after we're in different organizations, to still connect and talk, because we built a relationship that we both felt was meaningful, and I'm happy to contribute to their continued growth in that way. So I think
is there recommended frequency and length? Like, oh, we should do once a week in 30 minutes. What is kind of a general rule?
Yeah, that's a great question. Generally, we go monthly. So 30 to 45 minutes a month. Generally looking at a program length of 6 months, because schedules happen, things happen, but you want to have some regularity and you want to have some repetition of exposure. So you get to know the people's style. It also gives the opportunity for a mentee and mentor to tackle a specific thing and then talk about what happened after. Hey, did you have that conversation? Did you make that suggestion? Did you create that presentation you were working on? How did it go? If you don't have longevity of the relationship built into the program, it's kind of hard to have those longer term goals play themselves out.
Do you recommend it be an opt-in situation, or is it mandatory?
Definitely opt-in. These things require commitment from both participants, that they are ready to actually be there. If somebody is required to be there, you may not get their full honesty, their full input, and they're not going to get the full value out of it. So I would definitely suggest opt-in.
And then is there for structuring the call? So you have like 30 to 45 minutes. What do you do? Or whether it's in person or on a call?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I've actually seen it in different ways, both when I was a mentee as well as when I've been a mentor. Personally, I prefer a very clear agenda. And I recommend that that agenda be sent ahead of time, typically with only maybe 3 key questions that a mentee might want to ask a mentor, and maybe a reminder, hey, last time we talked about X, I want to give you an update on that. I think having line of sight is really good. I would say for me personally as a mentor, it's super helpful because it gives me time to reflect. Hey, I'm really concerned about what my next step is in my career. I'm really not feeling like our team is operating as efficiently as we could. I have some ideas. Then I can actually think about it in advance too, and come to the meeting prepared, not just react real time to, oh, you're asking me this question. If I could probably have given you a better set of answers if I had, 5 minutes to think about it ahead of time. And I think kind of making sure that everybody's aware that it's happening. Nobody's surprised that you're jumping on a mentorship call, that there's that dedicated space and nobody's multitasking during it, I think is really useful. I think the other piece that I like to kind of set up with people ahead of time, especially if it's a mentorship program within the organization that both parties work in, establish what the expectation is between the mentor and the mentee. If something comes up that the mentor really thinks that person's manager or team should be involved in, who's going to tell that person? Is it going to be the mentor or is it going to be the mentee? And so I always try to bring that up in the middle of conversations like, ooh, this sounds like one that you should really talk to your manager about. Do you want to talk to them about it or do you want me to? Because one of us is going to.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's almost like if you think of a therapist treating a child, and I mean, I'm not comparing the two, but you need kind of authorization. Like it needs to happen. Maybe it's something important the parent needs to know. So the teenager could tell the parent, but it's important enough that someone needs to tell the parent what's going on. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I like that. So a couple key questions and then updates as an agenda and working through those. Kristin, I just want to thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for walking through your methodology of this, creating more of a collaborative, open environment. I basically encourage anyone to check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out genomemedical.com. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kristin.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Process Breakdown Podcast. Before you go, quick question. Do you want a tool that makes it easy to document processes, procedures, and/or policies for your company so that your employees have all the information they need to be successful at their job? If yes, sign up for a free 14-day trial of SweetProcess. No credit card is required to sign up. Go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, and process like process.com. Go now to sweetprocess.com and sign up for your risk-free 14-day trial.
Hi, this is Owen, the CEO and co-founder here at SweetProcess. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast interview, actually, you know what I want you to do? Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. That way we get more people aware of the good stuff that you get here on this podcast. Again, go on to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Looking forward to reading your review. Have a good day.